how can managers actually start to anticipate inflection points? I feel like this is something that so many people are asking. What do you see as effective methods?
The simple answer is there is no simple answer because it's really difficult, right? I mean, a lot of times it will depend a little bit on the context that you're looking at, right? Sometimes the inflection points are based on technology. There's a sense that the technology is progressing very slowly, but there's a prediction that at some point in time we'll kind of see that take off and we'll be able to miniaturize at a much greater rate, or we'll get better resolution on our screens, or whatever it might be that will kind of move technologically. And there, oftentimes you have to rely upon the deep expertise that the engineers and the technology specialists really have there, the sense that, well, we know it's flat now, but we really believe that there's going to be this inflection point that's going to come up here. And that's difficult because the business managers who are making these big multi-million or billion-dollar investment decisions don't want to just have to rely upon the estimations of the technologists and the engineers who are kind of feeding them this information. But if the inflection point's coming from the technology side, then you may have to, because it may require that deep knowledge to really understand that. If we're thinking about what creates inflection points in things like consumer demand, right? When we see this sense that if we imagine that there's kind of an S-curve, the sense that early on an industry kind of grows relatively slowly, and then all of a sudden it kind of picks up and everybody kind of jumps on the bandwagon and enters and wants to be in that space and adopt that space. What usually happens around the inflection point is the emergence of what's called a dominant design. So usually we can think about early, before the inflection point happens, there will be multiple competing options, lots of different variations of a technology or a business model or whatever it is. And then what will facilitate or happens around that moment when we see the takeoff is that pretty much everything in the industry kind of coalesces around one standard, one way of doing things. And that could be a true standard. It could be HD DVD versus Blu-ray, or it could just be an acceptance about this is the way this industry is going to function, and we're all going to copy the same business model and things like that. And so I think if you're really looking for those inflection points and trying to understand how and when they're emerging, you're trying to really predict whether the industry is moving towards and how close it is towards this dominant design kind of emerging. And so you're trying to get a sense of, are we seeing convergence or divergence in the new products, the new ideas that are emerging on the market? To the extent we keep seeing divergence, we're not really coming anywhere near that sense of the dominant design. But to the extent we start seeing, yeah, there's still a lot of things out there, but all the new things are starting to look somewhat similar, that starts to suggest that we're seeing that level of convergence coming in there that will often lead to that big uptake. I have to say often because there's absolutely going to be situations where it won't work that way. It may be messier than that. We could see that false start and then it drops back off. But we tend to think about industry evolution following this kind of S-curve trajectory where it starts off flat and then picks up, and that inflection point in the hockey stick to some extent comes around that dominant design typically.